Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to Be Your Own Hero. I'm a stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer patient slash survivor. Been dealing with cancer since late 2020, early 2021, doing very well. In fact, we just celebrated Father's Day in here in Texas, and it was a beautiful day, really, really relaxing. We just spent it with my daughter, son-in-law, and my granddaughter, and my wife made some pasta and meatballs, and it was delicious and really relaxing day. And that's what it's all about. And we always are entertained by our granddaughter, who's just never stays in one place for more than a second. Just runs around and makes everybody chase her all over the house, but that's part of it. In fact, when I was battling cancer, in the throes of battling cancer, there's certain things that we can't see. We can't see the future. And what I was fighting for originally was I was fighting for my family. And I wanted to be around for my family, and to me, dying was never an option. I was going to live. I didn't know how, but I'm so thankful that uh, the good Lord showed me the way, and I've been able to find out things along the way that have helped me to be here today. But getting back to that original thought, I was fighting for my family, but what's turned out to be an incredible blessing and an honor is to be a grandparent. And I never dreamed that being a grandparent would be this great. I mean, it's been absolutely awesome. And it's just been such a joy. And basically, I'm so honored to be a grandparent. And it's just been indescribable. It's been so awesome. Anyway, we have a friend of mine, and his name is Brian O'Sullivan, and he's from Pennsylvania or New Jersey. I'm
New
sorry,
Jersey, southern
New
New Jersey,
Jersey.
Philadelphia suburbs,
Okay,
right
there
over the
we
bridge.
go.
Yeah.
Brian, please introduce yourself. And by the way, Brian is probably the most well-known person. He's a face of cancer, and you'll see why. We'll talk about it. But Brian is a phenomenal guy, and I've actually had the honor and the privilege to meet him in person. And we met at Tim Sohn's Showing Up Perspective on Cancer in Scranton, Pennsylvania, a couple of years ago. He's a great guy. Brian, please introduce yourself and share with us a little bit about who you are.
Definitely, Mark. Great story. You know what, the whole idea of the granddaughter showing us what life's really about. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. Again, my name is Brian O'Sullivan, and I'm in South Jersey. I always say South Jersey, Philadelphia region because people think New Jersey, they're like, oh, you're by New York, and we're like, well, no, we're in. Some people say slower, lower New Jersey, but it's a it's not a huge state, but yeah, it's one thing about this area is we are loaded with a lot of beautiful medical centers, and there's a lot of great places for that in the tri-state area, Philadelphia, New York, Pennsylvania. So, but I'll start myself, and I will say that I always say I was cancer naive until I heard three words: "You have cancer." It was just like I was always cancer naive. Didn't know about. Didn't I would see people on social media say they got diagnosed with a form of cancer, breast cancer, whatever, and I would put up some praying hands and I'd say, I'm gonna pray for you. And I did, but really that's where it stopped. I didn't know. I mean, even like when family members got diagnosed, it was a little different. It's but still, it's like I didn't know what they're going through. I don't know. It's like I don't. I just thought cancer was like, well, you either get better or you don't. Physically, And I didn't realize how much it affects up here mentally and emotionally, not just physically. The mental, the emotional battle is serious. It's big time. At least for me, it definitely is. And I do what I can to try to combat that every day. I'll get into that later, but I will just say this now. 2020. Well, let me go. Let me start here. 2019. I had this. I worked for the state of New Jersey for 16 years, and I said I'm going to go work for myself. That was my goal. I was going to work for myself. I was doing part time airplane shuttles, driving people to the airports, etc., like that, taking people out for night out of town, drop them off, pick them up later, and I built up a good reputation. And I was like, I'm ready to do this full time. And I said, yeah. So I started. I had a good reputation. People knew me. They would call me. I'd take you to the airport, Philadelphia airport, even New York sometimes. And then all of a sudden, in March of 2020, everything had shut down. We know that. Whatever we believe about the pandemic, the world did shut down. And I know that now I'm here and I'm home and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I just I chose to stay. Anyway, I I was not able to take people to the airport, so I was not able to do that because there were no, a lot of stuff was going on. It was crazy times, and I thought I got through 2020, and I remember January 2021. I thought the pandemic was over, and I said, "Let me get back to work. I'm ready to get back to work. I'm excited. I didn't get sick. I'm doing great. I'm feeling good." I said, "Let me go to the doctors and let me be an adult because I want to be an adult and get a physical." I was 49 years old. I was like, let me go. So I went to the doctor. I was concerned about the A1C because of the history of diabetes in my family, type 2 diabetes in my family. So I went to the doctors, get a physical and some blood work, got some results. And I got my results on a Saturday as opposed to getting them at the doctor's office. So on the Saturday, I have this, my white blood cell count was elevated. And I was like, I don't know what this is about. It was 16.1 when it's supposed to be no higher than 10 or 11. I'm grateful that I have my cousin, godmother, cancer survivor, medical doctor in my life. So I texted her on a Saturday and I said, "What's going on with this? Can we talk?" She said, "Yeah, we'll call." So we spoke on the phone and she said to me, she said, "Maybe it's a cold and your body is building up the white blood cell count to fight off what's going on, fight off the infection." And I said, "Well, that sounds great. Yeah, that sounds a lot better than what I was reading as I was Googling elevated white blood cell count because I didn't know about it. I didn't know. I never had an issue with that." And she said, "Why don't you?" I was going to be meeting with my doctor again the Monday after. I was a couple of days. She said, "Why don't you ask her if you can retest in a month and see where it's at then? Because hopefully it'll go back to normal in a month and you'll be fine." And sounds good. It sounded great. I talked to my doctor on Monday. We said, "Okay, we're going to go ahead and so now at this point, this is February of 2021. Yes, and I turned 49. And we went to the retest the blood, and all of a sudden now my white blood cell count was even higher. So at this point, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was. Here it was, 49, relatively healthy, and just was feeling good until now. I got this stuff going on my mind. So the doctor says to me, she said, "Brian, I want you to see a hematologist." And I'm like thinking, okay, you want me to go see? I had no idea what a hematologist meant. I didn't know what that was. It was just not in my bubble. That was not my vocabulary. I had family members who had Hodgkin's lymphoma and non-Hodgkin's as well. But all of a sudden, I'm like, she gives me the name of the doctor. So I went to my Google that I always fell back on, and I put the doctor's name and it said hematologist/oncologist. And I was like, wait, this is oncologist. I know what an oncologist was, but I said, this is not me. There's no cancer, you know. I said, I'm feeling great. I have no symptoms. I don't feel sick. I don't feel tired. I don't feel, you know, and I just was like, I don't know. It kind of got scary. And I called that doctor. It was a local oncologist outside of Cherry Hill, New Jersey area. And I called and I set up an appointment. And I went by myself. Never, big mistake. Shouldn't go by myself, but I'm a man and I didn't need anybody. I'm a manly man. So as I wear my sequins, I'm a man. But I'll tell you what, I got to the appointment and I looked up at the on the side of the building and it said Cancer Center in huge letters. And I was like, that was my oh blank moment where I was just like, this is where it all starts to end right here. And I went inside and I was a wreck. I was a wreck before the appointments. This doctor, he felt, my body, my armpits, the groin area, on the side here. So I don't feel any abnormal growth here. I don't feel any extended lymph nodes or anything like that. And I'm like, felt my spleen, and I was like, spleen. I didn't even know what a spleen was for at that point. And here I am. Listen, it wasn't in my bubble. Mark. It was just life here. It was just me. It's just but so he said, we have to do more tests. I don't feel anything. I don't feel any abnormal growth. And he was really, and I said, okay, no, I'm here. I want to get better. I want to know what's going on. So we did some more tests. I went, did more blood work. I got to know the people at the lab core by name, and they just knew me. And they would see me coming in, and I got more blood work. Had to come in for the next month in April 2021. At this point, he said to me, he said, you have one of two blood cancers. You have what's called chronic lymphocytic leukemia or mantle cell lymphoma, mantle cell. And I was like, neither one of them sounded like anything I wanted anything to do with. He said, well, I want you to do one more test. It's called a FISH test. It's going to determine which exact one you have. But he said, either way, he said, well, you probably have the CLL because it's a little more, it's easier to manage and it's more common. But either way, neither one of these diseases, your numbers are not so bad right now. My numbers were moving up a little bit, but not, they weren't high. Like the white blood cell count was the real trigger for me, and it moved up like a couple points every month, which is 10%. Like 10%, 1 point is 10% because of what it's supposed to be, but it wasn't as bad at that point. He started talking about watch and wait, and I just I said, all right, I'll go take this test, and then I know I'm kind of going. You jump in anytime you want, Mark, but I do keep going. So I got this FISH test. I went there. I took the test on a Friday night at 8:30. LabCorp dinged my phone, and I was home alone. And at 8:30, and I went and looked at my phone, and it said, "I'll say it's my best game show votes. Congratulations, you've won mantle cell lymphoma." And I was like, "Wow, this is a great way to start the weekend," because I hadn't even really looked at mantle cell lymphoma because he was telling me he thought it was a CLL. So I went for my second opinion that night. That night, 9 o'clock, 8:45, I went for my second right with Dr. Google. And Dr. Google said men in their 60s get diagnosed with this and live 5 to 7 years. And I was like, what's going on? This all started like I wish I never got a physical. That's what I was thinking. In my head, I was like, what did I even go for? And all I could think about, you were talking about the reason to live is for your family. And all I could think about was, I don't want my mother's down in Florida. I don't want my mother to have to bury her baby because I'm still my mother's baby. I'm the youngest. And that's all that I was thinking about. I was like, well, this is some type of karma from things that I did when I was younger. Maybe I was convinced of it. But that's where I was that night. I don't know if I'm going to keep going, Mark, or
Yeah, I mean, so you got your diagnosis.
on the
What
phone.
went what went through your mind at that time?
That my mother was going to bury me. And that's what I was. Because It said men in their 60s get diagnosed with this, live 5 to 7 years, 4,000 cases a year in the US. And this is what I saw. And Dr. Google said, and what's going through my mind is I'm going to die. And uh, I'm not going to even hit 60s. So what do they mean, men in their 60s? I said, I'm way too young. I'm 49 years old. And there's not a lot of things I'm too young for in this world, but I was too young for that. But so that's what was going in my head right there is,
So talk about, and this is for, anybody who's been diagnosed, because that is such a critical time in our journey is the diagnosis.
yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
how did you at what point did you change your mindset? How did that evolve?
Okay. Well, that night I went on Facebook because I know there's a lot of groups on Facebook. And I went on and I searched mantle cell lymphoma and I looked it up and I found some support groups on there. And I was like, wow, there's other people. It's not just me. There's other people with this. There's people all over the world. And there's people that are available in different time zones. You can chat. And I joined this group and I started introducing myself, and I said, and I found people. The first thing they said to me was, "Don't Google it." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a little too late for that," right? You can laugh, Mark, because you know what? I've found some humor with this. A little too late. And all of a sudden, I brought me here. So I was there, and I found people that are, and I thought, and I remember that first night, someone was telling me they had gotten this diagnosis 20 years past, 20 years before, and they're still here. They said 20 years, and back then it said, oh, it said your prognosis is 2 to 3 years. So back then it was like, even because you didn't have the on the internet, you had some, the doctors, the prognosis was not good back then. And it's better. It's better now. It is better now. But he said 20 years, one set of treatments, I'd be good. Well, it brought me some relief at that point. I really did. Because this gentleman was in his late 70s. He said, I was like, wow, okay. So people, I did bond. And I did find some people my age. So that's where I was at that point. And I went back. This was that first night. What was going through my mind at night was, how am I going to tell my mother that I'm going to die? That's another thing. And
So how did you do it?
I, I just, I reached out to my cousin and my mother in a group chat, a group text, and I said, "This is the diagnosis I got." And they both said, relax. We're going to get through this. You're going to get through it. My cousin is the doctor and the cancer survivor. And my mother was always stronger than me with this. See, I was like, wow, I was petrified. I didn't tell her. I just thought so. And she's always been a big supporter of mine. And yeah. So I'm going to get through this without crying, man. No,
No,
I'm not.
hey, you
I'm
know
not.
what? Whatever
I'm not going to get through without crying. I know that.
we're friends, we're discussing, and whatever comes out, you're sharing it with friends. And
Yeah.
these are things that people need to hear,
Yeah.
because y- by you sharing and by you peeling away the onion and revealing your heart and what you're really doing, people know that you're genuine, that you're somebody who is willing to help people, and your story resonates. You are a face of cancer. I mean, and we'll talk about that later. But I mean, I just think that being able to discuss these life-threatening situations with the people closest to you is so important. And to share, what you did, to share it with people that you are closest to. is absolutely critical. So let's
I,
talk about that.
I had friends tell me, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't mention to your parents that you have, like, if you have parents who, are, maybe you don't mention to them you have cancer or something like that." I'm like, I didn't come from that kind of family. What I come from a generation where our secrets keep us sick. You know, I
Yes,
need to be out there and I need to talk about that.
yes, absolutely.
Because I didn't start wearing all these sequins that night, and the hats and the different things like that. Like that wasn't that night. That took time because I was still in depression. But one thing I know is I made bonds with people in this support group that night, that Facebook support group, and I'm still part of that group. It's coming up. Yeah, and yeah, no, in fact, okay. I found a specialist, an MCL. MCL is for mantle cell lymphoma. MCL. I found an MCL specialist in New Jersey that night that someone had recommended. People, or my brothers and sisters in the support group, had, their life work was to advocate for others and to say this and gain a lot of knowledge. And I said, they said, here's a respectable MCL specialist in New Jersey and Hackensack, New Jersey, up way up north, Hackensack Meridian Health System. And I said, his name is Dr. Gua, Dr. Andre Gua. And I said, okay, I want to make an appointment. I want to get a second appointment with this MC because they suggested go find an MCL specialist, as opposed to a regular human. And my first doctor, Dr. Burke, love him. He's a great man. He really is. He's very caring. I've had many well, I'll get to that. But so Dr. Gua, but anyway, he was very caring and very, when I went for my second appointment, when I went back to my appointment with him, and he knew I already knew I had got my diagnosis, and I said I wanted to go for a second opinion with Dr. Gua at Hackensack Meridian. He said, "Well, I said, "Yeah, I went on social media and I found other people." He said, "I've already talked about your case with a doctor in Philadelphia at University of Pennsylvania. If you liked it, but if you want to go," and I said, "Well, let me go see the Dr. Gua." So I took the track up to, it was about an hour and a half, probably 2 hours, whatever it is. But I just know that we went up there to see Dr. Gua. I didn't go by myself this time. I I went with one of my nephews, and I tell you, we went through more blood work, more tests, more. It's funny because his name is spelled Goy. So when I got to the reception area downstairs, I said, "I'm here to see Dr. Goy." And she's like, "Oh, it must be your first time because his last name is pronounced Gua, And I said, "Oh, okay." But so we got there.
I was actually gonna ask you that. I was like, how do you spell that?
Yeah, Goy. And I thought Goy, but then they said, "Oh, it's your first time." Yes, yes. Wow. And I said, and I I made this appointment and I went and got blood work and I went for my first bone marrow biopsy that day, the first time. And I never forget, like doctor said, we're gonna numb you up. We're gonna numb you up. You're not gonna really. You'll feel a little bit. You'll feel like this little. And I said, you know what, doc? I've been getting blood work done for the last few months. I've been getting poked and probed and prodded. So he said, we're gonna, Then he asked my nephew. He said, "Do you want to step out? Come back in about 10 minutes." My nephew says, "Do I have to?" And he's like, "No, no, you can stay right there." They said, "You can stay right there." Big mistake because he's looking like this, and I'm lying down, like I'm facing you, Mark. He's looking down, and they put this needle in me, and my nephew's face goes like this. He's like, and I'm like, "Oh God." It made it so much worse. And I was just like, "Oh my God." I saw that expression on his kid's face. And I'm just like, and we just talked about it the other day. He said, because I saw that needle that he put all his weight into and is pushing that needle in your back. I'm like, "Oh my God." You know, it just made it like 10. It's good that we can laugh about this now because at that time, anyway, the doctor wanted me to get an EKG done, make sure my heart was okay, and more tests. But that face, I'll never forget because I've had two other bone marrow biopsies since then so far, and no one else was present in there. That was family or anything like that. But they both asked, if they could stay. But anyway, I digress. Let me get back here with
Well,
that.
let me pause you there for one
Yeah,
quick
of
second.
course, of course.
I think we have so much more to talk about, and I really enjoy talking with you, Brian. I love talking with people who are out there and who aren't afraid to talk, and you're one of those.
I am
And
out
I,
there.
yes,
You
you
know
are.
that.
Yes, you are. Uh, would you like to come back to shoot a part two?
I definitely would. You know,
Okay. All
I would
right.
love to.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun, and we'll continue and talk about some of the things that you're doing because we're getting crunched for time. So
All right.
what I want to do is I want to ask you a question, and it's unrelated to what we've been talking about. And the question is if you had like a superpower and you had the ability to help make the world a better place, what would you do?
Um, when it comes to cancer, just in general.
Whatever you want to do.
Well, when it comes to cancer diagnosis and just not to anticipate as much, not to get yourself all balled up. And a superpower would also be to change laws, about insurance, because I'm going to talk about that at my next session with you. And so, just to my if my superpower would be to be able to just grab you. And I love in person. And when we met in person, we hugged and all that. You saw my colors, the bling, and everything like that. But my superpower would be to just give you a hug and say, "We're going to get through this. You're going to get through this. Can't guarantee anything, but you're going to get through this. But we just got to try to relax because I've been where you are. I've been there. And you're automatically my brother right now. You're my brother. You're my sister. I never met you before today, and you talking about your diagnosis. But you know what? I'm here for you because I went from being cancer naive, like I said, to now it's like I just want to spend time with those whose lives have been affected by one form of cancer or another. And here I am today doing that with you, and everyone else is going to be watching. So that's my superpowers.
Wonderful. That's awesome. That's awesome, Brian. Hey, thanks so much for joining me today on To Be Your Own Hero. And thanks everyone for joining us and watching this video. And please like, subscribe, make a comment in the comment section. And you know, it's just been such an honor to talk with you, Brian. You know, to share experiences, and it's been such a wonderful, wonderful time. And I thank you. I really appreciate you. And I thank each and every one of you out there for joining us at To Be Your Own Hero. And there's so much we can do to help make the world a better place. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It could just be something small. It could be, smiling at somebody walking by you. It could be opening a door for
Mm.
somebody who needs that. It could be helping somebody walk across the street. Just, you know, it's a
It's a
great thing to help other people. You
it's a
want to say
ripple
something?
effect. A ripple
Absolutely. Absolutely.
starts with that one wave, and then the ocean just gets one wave
Absolutely.
one wave gets paid forward because that's what I do, and I'll talk about this more. But so many were there to advocate for me, and I want to pay it forward by advocating for others as well.
Awesome.
And I'm
Awesome.
grateful for the opportunity, and I look forward to talking about it in the next segment.
Absolutely.
By the
And
time I get done talking, we might have about 20 segments, but
thanks again,
appreciate it.
Brian. And thanks to
Thank
each
you.
and every one of you. And spend time with the people that you love and tell them how much they mean to you because our life is short. We only go around once, so make the very, very most of it. And we will see you next week on To Be Your Own Hero. Thank you very much.